we need to refrain what we deem as valuable, because a lot of what our society is telling us is valuable really is supporting an upside down society that really is not helping us. It's actually hurting us and causing us to do way more harm than it is good. So in this video, I want to talk about, what is value and what we value now versus what we really should start valuing more of. And I am by no means great at everything that I'm talking about here, but I was just doing a lot of self-reflection and just a lot of more research and watching other activists who are talking about these things, and just sort of self-reflecting on myself and the type of legacy that I want to leave on the planet and the type of work that I want to do on the planet. And so I really want to dive into this topic of what do we value and why what we currently value is actually way more harmful to ourselves and to the world that we live in. So what is value? First off, you know me, I always like to give definitions so that we're kind of on the same wavelength moving forward. So when I talk about value, this is the textbook definition. It is the regard that something is held to deserve, right? The importance, worth, or usefulness of something, right? Think about that. The importance, worth, or usefulness of something. Another definition is a person's principles or standards of behavior, one's judgment of what is important in life, right? So with those as the definition of value, what is it that we actually value now versus what we should be valuing instead? So let's talk about first what we actually value now. And I would say the number one thing on our planet that we have a tendency to value is money. And a better way of saying that is not just money, but consumerism, right? In our society, we're taught since we're childhood that we are not enough. That is the main core childhood wound or core wound that is instilled in all of us. We're taught that we're not enough, we're unlovable, and, we don't deserve XYZ, fill in the blank. We don't deserve love. We don't deserve whatever it is, right? And so in this sort of core wounding since childhood, where you're told to sit down, shut up, not have an opinion, not think, deeply, not think creatively to solve problems and stuff like that, we are then pushed to start to want things outside of ourselves. You see this very predominantly in all of the beauty industry, entertainment industry, every industry that there is. All of the industries are purporting and supporting that you should do better, you should have these things because this is what makes you a redeemable human being. This is what makes you a value to society. But when you actually look at what we value and this consumerism society, we have a tendency of creating unsustainability and a lot more harm, not only to ourselves and to our loved ones, but to the planet in general, right? So I'm going to talk about what we should value instead, but that's one of the core things that we have a tendency to value in our society is buying more, getting more things, getting more accolades, having a house, having a car, having the best house, having the best car, having the best clothes and the best fashion and the best this and the this and that. And I'm not knocking it. I'm all for enjoying pleasures in life and enjoying things, but we have a tendency to do it at such an excess in our society of living your best life or fear of missing out kind of energy that we just are unsustainably living. We're so disconnected from ourselves and so disconnected from the planet in general that we just are creating so much havoc on the planet because of that, because we're not in tune, and because these values or this value that is the core value of our westernized society in general that is now being spread across the entire planet is so prevalent, right? So consumerism, right? Buying more, making more money, right? I've been really contemplating for myself, just this past week about, the term of money and do we actually need it as much as we think we do? And if we were taught and raised in a different society where we actually valued what I'm going to talk about later, would we actually need as much money that we think we need? You know what I mean? And yeah, so that's that. So the second thing that we have a tendency to value a lot more of is individualism. And boy, is this one still sinking in for me, but because I'm an Aries, okay, Aries is my sun sign, and I'm all about that take charge, individualism, carve your own path. I get it. I really do understand. But as I'm getting older, and I've always kind of valued this, even just growing up in the family that I grew up in. I grew up with a huge family on my mom's side, and so community and sticking together and supporting one another, even when one is down and out versus another. I really grew up with those values being really instilled in me since childhood. So this individualism, where we have this emphasis on individual success and personal freedom, is a beautiful thing, but it can lead to just less consideration for the overall collective and environmental responsibilities that we have as human beings. We don't grow up in these little individual pods, and we're not a part of a community. I think we've really disconnected and really taken on sort of I would say colonialism culture, where there's this rugged individualism, and we've gotten away from our roots. I want to say just African, because I think this is actually worldwide. We've gotten away from our traditional roots. I think many traditional cultures had, about collectiveness and community not only with ourselves, but community with each other and the environment that we live in. So this individualism value that we have is so lopsided that we forget that we're all connected, that we're all one, that we all need each other, and we all depend on one another, whether or not we want to admit it or not. And it's so lopsided to the point where if someone needs help, it's looked at as a sign of weakness, and vulnerability is looked at as a sign of weakness, and showing emotions and having emotional intelligence and emotional empathy and things like that is looked at as a weakness. So this bro culture, this consumerism culture, this colonialistic culture is really wreaking so much havoc, and it really impacts like our environment, sustainability, and really leads to excessive use of things like cars and energy consumption and so much other things, because we haven't put this in check. We've gotten so far away from our traditional culture of leaning on one another. Even when you look at history and how we had to lean on I would say melanated people have had to always lean on one another, because we were more connected to the environment, more connected to ourselves, more connected to our community and our cultures. We've gotten so far away from that now this is what we consider to be our connection to the world. We look at a cell phone and say this is our connection, even when we're with our families, even when we're with our loved ones, even when we're with other people that we see as valuable in our lives. We are so hooked to this one device that we don't even have that connection with each other, and I want to talk about that more in depth. And so that's another value that I think is very lopsided, is individualism, right? The second one is economic growth. So this goes back to the money thing. And this is where we're really focusing on economic expansion and, getting more, having the best, this greed culture, where we've gotten so far off to where, the economy is just really so imbalanced, where it's that creating that huge disparity between the haves versus the have-nots. And if you don't have, then you're looked at as less than, right? And this economic growth, and really it's just greed, another word for greed, is that we're not putting in checks and balances. Like, how much do you really need to get paid to, own something? You know what I mean? And even ownership is just very interesting to me at this stage in life, as someone who does own a few things. It's interesting to me how, because we're in this sort of greedy society, we're sort of egged on and pushed in ways that make us more greedy, versus us taking a step back and saying, is this what we really need, this economic growth where we need to earn more in order to get more, in order to have more. And it's like all these things that we pack our lives with, and not to say that things are not valuable, but all these things that we, fight so hard to keep, we don't even get to enjoy it. I remember living in a high-end apartment, where I was paying, like, at the time it was like $1,800 for an apartment, right? A 2-bedroom apartment. And I remember just like my next door neighbor, right? She would get up early. You just know by listening to people's patterns over and over. But she would get up at like 6 o'clock in the morning, and then she would leave to go to, excuse the motorcycle in the background. But she would get up and leave to go to her job every day, and then come back at home till like 7 p.m. or something like that. And so out of the day, like, she only really got to enjoy her apartment that she was paying all that money for like, I don't know, maybe 6 or 7, 6 to, 10 hours out of the day. And that's kind of generous, right? And so it's like we do all these things to enjoy the little time that we have. We're so pushed to be on this rat race, pushed to get more, to look heavy with the Joneses, and I got this, and I got the latest weave, and I got the latest nails, so that makes me more valuable than you. And it's just like, really, like, you're telling me that you're more valuable, or you're seen as more beautiful, or you're seen as more fill in the blank, because you have all these excessive things, but you're so dead on the inside, you're so disconnected from your soul, you don't even know what your soul purpose is. And when you die, it's like, what did you really contribute to the planet? What did you really contribute to the earth? You know what I mean? And so this economic growth thing that we're so getting more and having to have all these excessive things, as much as that used to be a part of like my core value, I'm starting to wake up out of it. I think I woke up out of it a long time ago, especially when I went through like my wanting to have a tiny house movement, but tiny house myself. But what it's teaching me is that this whole greed culture is really lopsided, and it really, like, the more I connect with nature, the more I connect with myself in a deeper way, the more I realize I don't really need that much. You know what I mean? And I had that realization really like 10 years ago when I used to live out of a suitcase, and I used to be hopping from one house to the next or whatever. And I just recognized that I could live out of this one little suitcase, and I didn't even need as much as I thought I needed. And so that principle is now sort of coming full circle back in my life, and me recognizing, like, what is the legacy that I want to leave behind? Is it, I want to have, $10 million worth of properties and all this stuff so that I can pass down to my family? Yes, that might be something that may be valuable. But really, I feel for me at this stage in my life, the things that I want to leave behind is energy, because at the end of the day, we all die, but energy is never destroyed, right? And so when I'm talking about energy, I'm talking about memories. I'm talking about, lessons that is passed down, the things that I remember from my grandmother, or from people who have passed on, isn't the things that they left me. It's the memories that they left behind, the life lessons that I learned with them, the information and the things that they pass along to me through energetic means, which is another thing that we don't have a tendency to value, which I'll talk about more, and what we should be valuing. So that's another thing that we value that we shouldn't really be putting so much emphasis on, which is economic growth, right? More money, right? More things, And then another thing that we have a tendency to do is convenience and comfort, right? So in our westernized society, we often value convenience and and comfort and ease of doing things, making it very quick. And even though that is an awesome ideal, right? But it encourages laziness and encourages sort of lack of creative thinking, lack of creative will a lot of times, and it causes us to lead to extensive use of like disposable items and energy intensive technologies, right? Increasing the fossil fuels, and it really increases a higher carbon footprint and higher carbon emissions and just increased waste in general, right? And so, the more I reconnect to nature and stuff, and the more I simplify my life, I realize that we don't really need to have, do I need to get that new nail kit, to my front door in less than 24 hours? Like, is that really that important? You know what I mean? It's just, I don't know, it just becomes excessive to this point. And then the last thing that we value is just disposability. We dispose of humans, right? And we dispose of like waste products, right? So this single use products really leads to a huge landfill waste, like us polluting our oceans, polluting our lands, and we have no way of actually, getting rid of the waste and actually composting it and making it one with the earth, because we're creating these toxic plastics and toxic containers and stuff that aren't even biodegradable and can't even go back to the earth. So it's like we're creating all these things that aren't even really sustainable, right? So, and not only disposability of just single use items, but we still dispose of our elderly, and that's something else I want to talk about. We dispose of, because we're such a consumerism society, right? We believe that once you've hit a certain age, you've reached your prime or you've reached your peak, right? And so, I think in America, that age is like 60, 65. And so we tuck away our elderly and say, you're no longer valuable. We hide them away in 55 plus communities or, nursing homes and stuff like that, and have no value. We separate them from us and say, you don't have any more value or whatever. And we don't even, there's so many other things. I want to get into the next section. So those are really like the 5 things that we value in our society that really we should not be valuing as much as we think we should. You know what I mean? So consumerism, money, right? Individualism, economic growth, greed, and getting more things, right? Owning things, possessions, right? Convenience and comfort, things getting here quickly or fast, or, not having to, do things anymore because of the convenience of technologies or the convenience of disposable items, right? And then disposability, right? We have a tendency to value things that I can get rid of quickly. Let me just throw that away. I can get another one. Right? I can get more plastic, or I can get more this. Or we dispose of humans as though they have no value to bring or no wisdom to bring, right? So what should we be valuing instead? And I've been just sort of diving into this more, and I have a whole long list of things that I really want to tackle. And the thing is, right, is I really believe that the number one thing that we really should start valuing more is connection, right? And it's going to lead to the rest of the other things that I'm going to talk about. But what I mean by that is connection with ourselves in a deeper way, knowing ourselves beyond just, hi, my name is Rachel, and I'm a Black American female in America, and I am this age and XYZ. More than just surface level stuff, but really knowing yourself at a soul level, right? Connection with ourselves, connection with our bodies. We're so disconnected from our bodies. That's why obesity is so huge and on the rise in our society. You know what I mean? And I'm not fat shaming anyone, but obesity is a medical issue. You know what I mean? For so many of us to be so disconnected from ourselves that we can allow our bodies to expand to insurmountable weights, that is just not healthy for or sustainable for our organs and for, our bodies to carry all that weight, right? So that's a whole nother topic. But connection with ourselves, connection with our bodies, connection to the planet, to the earth that we live on, right? We live on this beautiful planet, you know what I mean? And I was sharing in another recent video how much I really love South Florida. And, people think, like, from watching that video that it is, oh, I like it because of the cosmopolitan culture. Actually, no, I really just love the area because of nature. Most of the time when I fall in love with places, it's because of the nature that it's there, right? The environment, the earth. It's not necessarily even the people. As much as I love human beings are very complex, but it's the nature, the animals that are there, the ecosystem. Like, I fall in love with that in a certain place more than I actually fall in love with the man-made things first. And so, we're so disconnected from the planet that we live on, that we get angry at seeing, geese naturally cross the street, and we yell at them and honk at them and tell them to move. But actually, you're in their environment. You know what I mean? Like, you're actually an animal too. You know what I mean? Where you get so angry and run over the deer and kill the deer. You know what I mean? It's like, let the deer cross the freaking street. Are you that much in a rush to go to the red light? You know what I mean? Like, it's just crazy. We're so disconnected from the planet, from the animals, from nature, and we're really disconnected from each other in a deep and intimate way. We're not connected to our soul, to our essence, to our traditions. You know what I mean? When we were connected, we knew to honor a life. You know what I mean? I was out with some family just a weekend ago, and I think it was like an ant or something that was crawling or whatever, and I think my nephew was like, kill it or whatever, and I was like, no, I don't kill them when they're out in their natural habitat. If they're not bothering me, they're not pestering me and stuff like that, I believe they should live. But if they're like in on me or crawling on me, yeah, they might have to die. Okay, but in general, like, I don't believe in just aimlessly killing animals. You know what I mean? So that's the number one thing. And I think if we really start to value our connection with ourselves, our bodies, the planet, and with each other in a deeper and more intimate way, a lot of the things that we're facing right now as a global community will start to shift, and we can actually make sure that the planet is not only inhabitable for future generations, but that it's enjoyable. With our increasing landfills and pollution and all that stuff, who knows what the planet on Earth is going to look like, 50 years from now, So, the things that we should start valuing more is building healthy and loving relationships. Without this, do we need, like, this is still valuable, right? I just had a really great conversation with one of my good friends on here. So this has value, right? But it's like, do we need to always be so connected? Like, when you're in the presence of someone, be fully present, right? Have healthy, loving relationships, be open and honest, and being able to not only give and talk about your stuff, but also be a receiver and being able to hold space for other people. Too often in these sort of lopsided relationships, people just spew out all their stuff and they don't even have space within them for you to have an actual relationship. Relationship means to relate to one another. It's not one-sided. So we really need to learn the art of communication. That is very important and a deep part of connection, right? Also, airing out all this dirty laundry and getting people with personality disorders the help that they need, right? I'm so glad that personality disorders and stuff like that, awareness is becoming way more prevalent in our society. But what are we doing about it? You know what I mean? Like, we're talking about how to stay away from the narcissist, or how to recognize a person with avoidant personality disorder, or how to do this. But what are we doing to actually make this world a better place? You know what I mean? Like, we're starting to find out that no, maybe people on the, cluster B spectrum is way more than just the 12% that we have originally suspected. But what are we doing to actually shift that? What are we doing to make the world a place? One of the things that I remember learning when I was like 18 or 19, I went to the local museum here in Atlanta, and I was watching, it was some type of exhibit or whatever, and it was like someone had documented West African culture, and one of the things that they did in that West African culture was they would hold like these plays and like these community and communal plays and stuff like that. And so, some kids would get up on stage and act out something that was going on in the society, and as a way of sort of bringing to light and airing out dirty laundry so that they as a community can fix it and do what they needed to do, reprimand those who need to be reprimanded or punished, and set things right, have judgment, ma'at, in place. But a lot of times, because all this stuff is hidden, we got all this black market stuff going on, all this hidden stuff of just, sex slaves and slavery in general and all kinds of stuff going on, that, we're just letting all these people with personality disorders run the planet. And it's just like, this should not be the norm, right? Like, I honestly don't believe that anyone who has a major personality disorder, especially if you're on the cluster B spectrum, they should not be in places of power, right? I mean, I know that's discrimination, but like, they discriminate people on way less, right? Like, if you have brown skin for a long time, you didn't have the opportunity to be in a place of power. I think it should be more so if you have a personality disorder where you're prone to be individualistic, prone to only think about you versus the collective. I don't think that people of that caliber should be in office. They should not be allowed to run for president. They should not be allowed to run for government and any of that, right? Like, that should be a checks and balance system that's in our society. You know what I mean? Like, we need to get back to this sort of nurturing, loving, caring world that is available to us, and stop letting these people be in places of power. They shouldn't be making decisions for the collective when they're only thinking about themselves. They shouldn't be allowed to write laws that only thinks about. It's just really ridiculous, the society that we live in right now, right? Also creating mental health support systems, and not being made to look crazy when someone is actually going through something, right? So in the last video, one of the last videos, I talked about, having to deal with someone who I was sitting next to someone who I thought who had a mental health issue. And even though I'm very compassionate to most people, like having done Uber and Lyft, I've been literally a therapist to thousands of people at this point. But, I feel like we need to have more readily available mental health services, and more like places where people can come and share their issues if they can't afford a therapist, if they can't, you know what I mean? And maybe if they're alone, because not everybody comes from a huge family like I do. A lot of people are alone. And so they find themselves trying to find comfort and solace into these relationships where people don't even have not even the coping mechanisms or communication skills to even be able to hold space. So I feel like we need to have more mental health support systems built into our society, you know what I mean? And not to be looked at as crazy when you're going through something, because everybody goes through something. We all have darkness, right? We all have the shadow aspects of ourselves. And so when we make someone else out to look like they're crazy, or make someone else out to look like, oh, they should be ashamed that they feel this way, or should be ashamed that they're experiencing XYZ, it's total bullshit, because we're all humans and we all go through shit. To cast judgment, you know what I mean, is the definitely Christian upbringing that's coming within me. It's just a moral thing. How dare you cast judgment on someone when you know that you've gone through probably even worse, but because your dirty laundry hasn't been aired, like, you can sit up in a high position and cast judgment on others. We just need to have more compassion, more vulnerability in our society, and we need to build in more like mental health support systems in our society, so it's not so dog eat dog world in this society. We shouldn't be competing against one another for resources and dumb shit. You know what I mean? It's just, there's so much abundance on this planet. Like, why can't we all get along, and why can't there be resources for everyone to get what they need? And then another thing that I think we should start implementing more is having actual morality and codes of ethics to live by, versus this everything goes, this Me Too movement, in the name of freedom of speech or freedom of expression. Like, what happened to our value systems? You know what I mean? To our traditional, Ma'at laws. Like, what happened to those things? We just threw them out the way and said, oh no, I can, bump my booty and do all this, and this is acceptable for a 3-year-old to do that. No judgment, you do you. But it's just like, our value systems have like really been shot to hell. They've been shot to hell, and we don't have a moral code that we live by anymore. It's like everything goes. We can have 80 million sexual partners, and no one's, let's do drugs, and drugs is in, and like, we're just all over the fucking place, all over the map, and on this stuff, you know what I mean? So it's just, I think we just really need to start valuing that. And this is all goes back to that connection. When you're connected to yourself, and when you're deeply connected to others, like, do you really want to cause harm? Do you want to really, because when you deeply connected, you recognize that when you cause harm to others, you're causing harm to yourself, because we're all connected, right? So having a moral code, right? And not just willy-nilly. And the thing is, all these things without this lack of morality is causing so much damage, because I've met so many people, thousands of people, doing what I've done over the years. And so many people are just so unhappy. They're so disconnected from themselves. They feel, lost. They feel, just not connected. And I know, because I've had thousands and thousands of conversations with thousands and thousands of people. So I know that this is the overall consensus, just from taking my small little population of thousands of people, that I know that this is way more than just my little thousands of people that I've dealt with, right? This lack of morality, this lack of judgment, this lack of code of ethics is not making anyone happier. It really isn't, And then another thing that we should embrace, which is also connection to me, is embracing death more. And the reason why I believe that this is going back to that connection with ourselves, connection with our bodies, connection with the planet, and connection with each other in a deep and intimate way, is that once you start to recognize that this life is impermanent, right? We all going to die. We all leaving the planet at some point, okay? So I think a part of that is increasing our a belief system in whatever it is, whether you believe in heaven or going back to the cosmos or going back to your soul source or whatever you believe in, right? Embracing our impermanence in human form and embracing an afterlife more will help us to stop being so consumerism, right? Consumeristic, whatever, that's making up words, but like we will stop being so greedy and creating all this stuff because we're trying to hold on to what little lives we have. Yeah, we should age gracefully, and I'm going to talk about that more in like community collective and other stuff below. But like, because we're so afraid of death and we're so afraid and we're trying to get as much time as possible, which I think we can do sustainably, we can do through preventative healthcare versus through the current healthcare system, right? We can do it in more sustainable ways, but we really just have to embrace that we all gonna die. Like, stop thinking that you're not going to die, whether you're 20 or you're 50 or you're 70, like, or you're 10, like we're all going to die, and many of us die at various different ages. But if we could stop looking at death as though it's some evil thing that we ought to avoid, like, you came from somewhere. Where did you come from? Like, you know what I mean? Like, you were energy before you came into this energetic being, and you're going to release the energy from this body and move on to something else. So whatever that is that you believe in, I think that we need to talk about this more and have more conversations around death and embrace death more. Like, we don't talk about death at all in our society, and we're delusional, and we are scared of it because we don't fucking talk about it. It's this taboo topic, and we think that, you know, people who do talk about it are looked at as satanic or all this stuff. And it's like, no, like, this is fucking real life. You're going to die. We are all going to die. So the more we embrace it, and you embrace whatever afterlife story you believe in, right? I have my own. The more that I think that we will release a lot of these values that don't really make sense, you know what I mean? That where we have this upside down society where right is wrong and wrong is right, you know what I mean? We'll release a lot of that stuff, right? And another part of that is that we'll stop pushing away the elderly and shoving them off into communities or corners and hiding them away from society, right? We'll start to embrace them, integrate them more into society, learn from them, help them out, you know what I mean? Versus this hide them away from society because we don't want to see what death looks like. It's just like, really? Like, it's just the world that we live in. It's just hilarious to me, you know? I remember when I was younger, I used to always have a fascination with old people, and I always connected with old people because I always felt like an old soul. I always liked sitting around the table at, you know, my aunts and uncles' conversation with my grandma and hanging out with my grandma and stuff like that, my grandmas, and just listening to their wisdom and their thought processes and things like that, because I could tell that they had been here for so long and they had a lot of wisdom to share. And so I think we just miss that as a culture. You know, we miss that in general because we're not connected to ourselves, you know, and because we're not connected to ourselves in a deep way, as we get older, we don't even have wisdom to pass on. You know what I mean? So we stay dumb, we stay emotionally unintelligent, and we stay disconnected from our true selves and from the earth wisdom that's already here innate within us. So all these traditions that used to be passed down, the information and knowledge that was stolen from us or that we gave away, whatever way you want to look at it, we're missing that, and we're not integrating it into ourselves and into our society, and we're not passing it down generations, you know what I mean? So that just is another thing that we need to embrace. So those are different things that I put under connection. Another thing that I think we should start to value more is sustainability rather than consumerism, right? So cutting back on our use of plastics, right? Improving our transportation systems so that we don't all have to get these insane car notes, right? And can keep contributing to the emissions footprint on the planet, right? Going more plant-based, right? I think going more plant-based, not saying that everybody needs to become vegan, but if we can have like plant-based where at least you're 50+% plant-based, because plants, I feel like, you know, that's a whole nother topic, you know, because I've watched a lot of documentaries on that and people talking about, well, plants are just as expensive as things, but I'm like, really not in comparison to all the rainforest and deforestation that goes on just by housing cattle and things raised for slaughter, right? So, you know, I think going more plant-based can help reduce the need for billions of animals to be slaughtered every year and housed, which also reduces the need to destroy rainforest and valuable earthland with centuries of wisdom that's in these forests, right? And untapped medicines and untapped herbs, or just trees in general. We don't even have to tap into them, right? Let the trees and the plants do what they do, which is to clean the air and to make this earth and earth, right? Like, if we don't have earth, like, what the hell are we going to be living on? What are we going to be consuming hundreds or thousands of years from now when we destroy the planet? Like, come on, this is just common sense. Common sense is not really common on our planet. I have to remind myself of that. So sustainability, I think, is one thing that we should start to think. And these next few ones that I'm going to share about are things that I'm going to be implementing more over the next years of my life, right? I'm just documenting and sharing what I find that we have forgotten in our past, you know what I mean? So improving the roads to have more bicycle and walking lanes, we can start with that. Carpooling more, transit systems that are more affordable, right? Nice and nice, right? And using less of a carbon footprint, right? So if we could create, train systems that run on electricity or water or whatever, where we don't have to always use fossil fuels and stuff like that, right? That's contributing to whatever we're doing to the planet, right? Reducing our overall carbon footprint so that we can prevent deforestation and increased industrialization and overcrowded landfills and land and ocean waste and pollution, right? So I think that's a huge piece of sustainability. I'm not a sustainability guru, but this just is what I've been researching on and understanding more of, right? And I think I'm going to start making personally a more concerted effort to just reduce my carbon footprint in terms of using plastic and that stuff like that, and just making more of a concerted effort moving forward and being more ecologically friendly in general. It's something I really never really thought of at all, from the plastic bags that I used and not using reusable things and things like that, right? And just reducing, the need for all that stuff, plastic bags to take out the trash and like, I'm starting to think of like, God, I use so much things, you know what I mean? And we all do. We all use so many things. And it's like, do we really need to be doing that? We really just, as a culture and as a society, need to like relearn how to live in tandem with the earth, right? In tandem with our natural way of being that is not harmful to the planet or to ourselves, you know what I mean? So that's something in my own life that I'm going to be making more of a concerted effort to not contribute to, and going more green, going more in alignment with the planet, but just in alignment with ourselves, right? Because even on another thing that I didn't talk about is that all these little plastics and things that we're a thing really for us women and men provide lots of xenoestrogens, right? Like the plastic coming off the cars and our cars and everything is just so, and we wonder why we're so toxic. And one of the reasons why I so totally believe in detoxification and actively detoxing your body with herbs is because we're bombarded with all these things that just are not sustainable and also contributes to xenoestrogen, which for women, that means estrogen dominance, which means very, unhealthy wombs, a whole bunch of womb issues for our men. That means demasculinization, meaning that you're increasing your estrogen in your body when you're supposed to have more testosterone and other hormones that are related to the male, and that means making men more feminine and stuff like that. And it's just like creating just a lot of hormonal imbalances, which creates a lot of toxins and stuff in the body and a lot of diseases and stuff like that don't need to be there if we just got rid of just the way that we live, right? So that's that. Another value that I think that we need to start to embrace more is community and the collective, right? So this is back to that connection piece, right? But helping one another more rather than saying someone is worthless because they can't do something on their own, right? We weren't built to live in silos all the time in every area of our lives. That's fine if you want to have your own house and you don't want to live with other people. That's totally fine. I get it. I'm totally a loner in that way. And I don't like living with a lot of people either. Trust me. But in general, I'm not just talking about our living situations, but I'm just talking about having a community culture in general, being able to lean on one another. Something that we can start to create more of is like community gardens and stuff like that, and urban farming. So we don't always big pharma and like these big, industrialization. They've literally usurped the entire freaking you know, food system, right? Like I went to the farmer's market last week with my sister, and like it was so hard to find seeded citrus, right? Like they had like one little section that still had seeded oranges, and the oranges weren't even that good, right? Like whereas just 5-10 years ago, their seeded oranges was the normal, but now all we have is seedless. Like that's not normal, right? Like oranges in nature grow with, you know, like fruits grow with seeds, you know. So you got to be asking yourself, okay, so this is no longer non-GMO. You know, you have these organic seedless oranges. How can it be organic if it don't got seeds? That don't make no sense to me. You know what I mean? Like how does that, like I know I'm speaking Ebonics, but it's like that doesn't make any sense to me, you know? Like so yeah, having community gardens and shared spaces where people can grow food more collectively. You know, these gardens not only really provide like fresh produce and reduce food miles, but also foster a sense of community and connection with the planet and encourage more sustainable and agricultural practices, right? So, you know, like I went to South Florida for vacation a few weeks ago, and just going to one of their big food markets, and you can tell, you know, each farmer has their big table full of foods and just loads of produce, you know, just sitting there on the table. And I just, you know, just taking pictures, and I was just like, God, this is gorgeous. Like, look at this abundance that's here. You know what I mean? And if we could start doing that in each of our communities, we would need less, you know, need to depend on these grocery stores and depend, even though they're beautiful inventions and stuff, and not everybody wants to become a farmer, Rachel. I get it. But there's some of, like, if we can start just connecting with our food more, we would see that eating plants and doing things in a more sustainable way, where we don't need to refrigerate everything and try to freeze everything, because we're living in the present moment, right? You're actually getting the nutrients as your body needs it, versus, you know, this sort of delayed thing, whatever. That's a whole nother topic. But urban farming and community gardens and stuff like that can really transform like some of these vacant lots that we have, and turn some of these rooftops into productive green spaces, and contributing to more food security and promoting more local and organic food production versus these GMO practices that we have in order to sustain our existence. And it would also reduce the need for carbon emissions and fuel emissions for us to be importing, you know, all these things from these different countries, because we don't grow it ourselves, you know what I mean? And because we're not tapping into our own local land's ability to grow whatever produce grows for us seasonally and locally, you know what I mean? So I think that would also reduce the need to import and all that stuff. And I don't know, it's just, I don't have the answers, you know what I mean? I don't have the answers to everything, and I'm not going to pretend like I have the answers. But these are just things that I've been researching that other ecologists and environmental activists talk about, you know what I mean? Who knows, you know, whatever. Flows what feels good, let go what doesn't. But this is something that has been intriguing me more, you know, especially as I'm created Divine Earth School a long time ago, and just wanting to be more in tune with the earth, right? Another thing that we can do under, you know, community and collective is, you know, having more shared, you know, cars and shared carpool systems, you know, where we don't have to have so many vehicles on the road and be stuck in traffic all the time, you know what I mean? Or creating transportation that doesn't have us having to, you know, take our cars and gas cars and stuff like that everywhere. You know, if we could have more bullet trains, you know, or whatever, things that don't require so much fossil fuels all the time, you know, and for us to have more shared rides, not like Uber or Lyft, but like Uber or Lyft, but more like, you know, friends and family. Like I was, I can't remember who I was talking to about this. I was talking to my dad, because he also does ride share. And he was like telling me a story of like this older man who was sending his older mom off to the hospital or whatever, and how he had like, you know, called a ride share to come get his mom or whatever. And he was like, when he went to the lady's house, there was like 4 cars sitting in the driveway, but nobody wanted to take the old lady to the hospital to get a checkup and stuff like that, you know? And he was like, this is just pure laziness. Like, what happened to caring for one another and taking care of one and each other? No, you'd rather be sit up on your phone or playing video games because you don't want to help one another. And it's just, and I totally felt where he was coming from, because I understand that, you know what I mean? Like, that you really don't care about your own mother to the point where you're going to send her to the hospital by herself, you know what I mean? Because you're too lazy to take her. Like, I don't know. It's just, we are so disconnected from ourselves and from each other. And it's just really sad, you know? And then other things that other people have talked about, which is zero waste and recycling programs. These are all things that I'm going to be studying more into. So I'm not going to get into what that is because I really don't know. I'm just learning about this myself. So yeah, one of the things I do know about is I think a principle that we need to start implementing more of is the fourth one is preventative healthcare, right? And I'll end it on that one. And what I mean by preventative healthcare is health and well-being in this present moment, right? Instead of putting off, like we have this tendency to like save for a rainy day, but you can't do that with your health. You know, you can't treat your body like trash in your 20s and 30s and 40s and think that you're going to have a great, you know, health in your 50s, 60s and 70s and 80s. You know, that's not how it works. Like every investment that you put into your body now is what's going to help you to have longevity and a healthy life, you know, elderly life, you know, granted that your soul didn't come here to die before the age of 50, you know, I don't know what your soul's plan is, but let's say your soul does plan to live on the planet for longer periods of time. We just need to start to embrace more preventative healthcare. And the person who taught me that is my mom. She's always been into prevention. She's a physician assistant for over 30, 40 years, right? And ever since I was little, she always promoted, you know, the aspect of, you know, just simply sustaining your body and taking care of it rather than relying on big pharma or this medical system to take care of you and have you be souped up on a whole slew of expensive drugs in your 50s, 60s, and 70s that really harm your body and harm the environment, right? So what does preventative healthcare look like? What that can look like is promoting more physical activity and exercise, right? Promoting more healthy nutrition and cooking classes, right? You know, getting regular physical activity is key to aging gracefully. Putting that excess weight on your body every day, moving it, staying limber and mobile, right? Moving your body with things like, you know, yoga or tai chi or water aerobics or just simply walking and making sure you're stretching every day and adding some weights to yourself, encouraging regular walks, participation in dance groups, community sports and stuff. Like, you know, you shouldn't be like immobile and having hip problems in your 30s. That means that you ain't moving enough. Like, you know, I was listening to this other YouTuber who was talking about that a while ago. It was like, oh, when you hit your 30s, it's, you know, it's up there. I was like, no, that has nothing to do with 30. It just means that you're immobile and you ain't doing nothing. Like, you shouldn't be, like, I don't know. I can't say what you should and shouldn't be doing, but I just feel like it's so funny to be in this culture that we think that 30 or 40 or 50 is old when we really have the capacity to live well into our hundreds. But because we're so, like, poor, that we're what I mean by poor is that we're so emotionally and wisdom poor. Like, we're not wise as a culture, right? As an American culture, I feel like we're so unwise. We don't take the wisdom and implement the wisdom of older generations of history, of older traditional cultures. We think that traditional cultures are outdated or, you know, savage or, you know, less than, you know, and it's so stupid because that's where we come from. How can you shit on your ancestors? You know what I mean? We're so dumb. Like, really. Like, so just basic moving your body, being out in nature, taking a walk, you know, connecting with the trees that sustain your fucking life. Really? Like, you don't value a tree, but without them bitches, you would be dead. You know what I mean? Like, what do you think cleans the air? Like, we're so disconnected, yo, like, seriously. So back to preventative healthcare, promoting like physical activity more, you know what I mean? Exercise, you know, one of the other things that I want to talk about is, you know, going back to the obesity thing is that, you know, people often have this misperception, this is a health coach and me talking, is this misperception that weight is controlled by how much you move your body. And even though I'm saying that moving your body is very important and stuff, it is not the key to you keeping the weight off. The key to keeping the weight off is good, healthy, proper nutrition, right? You know, making meals that in making meals according to your species. Like, we're plant-based species. Like, we're designed to eat way more plants than what we think we are, right? We've been so brainwashed into thinking that, oh, we're carnivorous. We're not carnivores. If we had to go out into the wild with no fucking, knives or stakes or fire, right? And we were told that we have to eat, what do you think as a human species we're going to go towards? We're going to go towards the trees and trying to climb things and trying to pick the fruit and stuff. We ain't going to go chasing after the squirrel and try to eat the squirrel live. You know what I mean? Like, that's not... Like, so it's just freaking common sense. That's just really not that common on our planet. So healthy nutrition is really what helps keep the weight off, right? So eating according to your body, right? What your body needs is nutrients that we get from plant sources mainly, is really what helps you to age gracefully, giving the body the actual proper nutrition from the foods that your body recognizes as fucking food. You know what I mean? All these pseudo foods that we have, like all the grocery stores that line up with all these packaged foods with 80,000, ingredients in them, where half of them you can't even pronounce and you don't even know what it is, and all these fillers and toxic things and preservatives and stuff that we put in the food, and it's just like, that's not really food, and your body doesn't recognize it as food. It's just that our body is very highly adaptable. It's really very smart and can adapt to the most extreme things, and so that tells you how intelligent our body is. But we as a human species are not that fucking intelligent at this stage in life, that we just are so disconnected from ourselves and what is just so natural and normal. But we've been so pushed into this society where what is natural and normal has become, like demonized, and it's just really sad, So good nutrition is really the cornerstone of health and keeping a healthy body. I was gonna say slim, but that doesn't necessarily mean slim. You could be slim thick, but whatever. It just means your body is, not overly obese or having all these diseases and immune deficiencies and things like that, right? So that's one way to have preventative health care. Also supporting mental health and lifelong learning, right? Mental health is so important in aging gracefully and being able to have that support system, like I talked about with that community, right? Providing more resources for us to receive counseling and therapy. I believe that everybody on the planet, especially if you grew up in a westernized society, deserves counseling, needs therapy, right? Regardless if you have a personality disorder or not, we need that, whether or not you receive counseling or therapy through your friends or through your family members, we all are all either helping one another through things, That's a form of therapy. That's what therapists do, right? So we need more of that, and not to demonize each other for needing to lean on one another. It's just ridiculous that we don't think that that being vulnerable and expressing the hard times that you're going through makes you weak. That's bullshit. You're human. Being on this planet of contrast is fucking hard. Like, let's be real, okay? It's very challenging. It doesn't need to be, because we make it way more challenging than it ought to be, honestly. But the way that we set up stuff, like, it's really insane that we think that mental health is not an issue. And the fact that we have so many drugs, we have so much alcohol, we have so many escapism things like Netflix and all these things that we numb out on, and we wonder why we think that we're not receiving mental support. Like, that's the way that many people cope, because they don't have these other resources. That's what, at their disposal, right? So we need to create more programs for cognitive stimulation and cognitive release and expression and release, like classes, yoga classes, book clubs, more workshops on mental health, right? So that we can keep the mind not only active and engaged, but also to receive a catharsis, right? Emotional and mental health is really important, right? And these lifelong learning and connection opportunities really help us to explore new interests, allow us to learn new skills, and really contribute to a sense of purpose and fulfillment, which we're all seeking in our lives, right? So that's also part of the preventative healthcare that we need to look into. And then fostering more social connections and community and involvement, right? So staying more socially connected to the capacity that you need to. Some of us as souls didn't come here for huge connections. Some of us didn't come to have big families. Some of us are really great being connected just to 2-3 people, and that's our connection, whatever that is. And some of us came to have big families, whatever that is, but we need to start supporting and fostering that more. That helps us to age gracefully. One of the things that I learned in health coaching school is that, what do they call it, the blue zones, right? Pick up that book. But they did a lot of studies on, the communities on the planet that age gracefully and move into the centurions very easily. And these are some of the main things that they had in place, right? Social connection, feeling a part of a community, being able to have loved ones to talk and release any energies that you're having. Predominantly plant-based diet, right? They're moving and exercising. These are the key components that these people who aged into their hundreds and still had good health, they weren't just old and decrepit, centurions. They were moving about and still stuff, you know what I mean? Even before they died, These are the key components that we need to start to build into our society. We don't need a society full of drugs and all these pill popping and this next new trial and all this stuff. And it's like, they all have a place, right? I think that, catastrophe medicine, I would call it, like medicine for extreme events where you break your arm, or, a rock falls on your house or whatever, or a flood happens and you need to be resuscitated, whatever. Those traumatic type things, that's where medicine should really start to shine, and shines, right? It's beautiful. But all this preventative stuff, like, the random diseases, like, just diabetes and high blood pressure and heart disease and all that stuff, is because we just aren't connected to ourselves or the planet. If we were connected to ourselves and the planet, we would know what foods naturally nourish our body. But because we're so disconnected, we just eat whatever is available to us, whether we think it's food or not. But the body knows what is food or not, because it's going to tell you. It's going to slowly create inflammation and create these diseases. The diseases aren't there to punish you. It's your body saying, yo, whatever you're giving me, it ain't working. Warning, alert, change course. That is what a disease is there for. But we think that a disease is, oh, God is punishing me. No, it's my mofo. You ain't doing the right steps to feed and fuel me, so I have to give you a warning sign so that you can change your ways. You know what I mean? So we just really need to get back to these core values of, and I'm going to just recap, of connection, sustainability, community, and collective, right? And preventative healthcare, right? And when we start to do that, right, we'll start to be able to, I feel like as a society, just feel more connected, to ourselves. And so less disconnected, as a culture, and less disconnected from our purpose and our soul's calling and what we're here to do, right? I'm not saying that we need to reverse and give up all technology and give up everything and walk away from everything that we've created as an industrialized society. But I think the large majority of what we've created so far isn't working, and it's not sustainable for the planet. And we do need to find a way to create technology and resources that is in tandem with the planet. We don't have to be so like dumb smart, dumb intelligent. You know what I mean? Like, why don't we use our intelligence and create sustainable things that actually is in tandem with the earth versus disconnected from our planet, from our home, and from each other, you know what I mean? So I'm done with my rant, and I just wanted to share this on, all of what I was sharing, because I just it was just on my heart to share. And yeah. As always, flow so it feels good, let go if it doesn't, because you are divine. You're a divine being, and your soul knows exactly what you've come to explore and experience while on this planet. So, flow feels good, let go if it doesn't. And yeah, catch you guys when I see you next. Peace of the night.